This is exactly the information that I tell everyone who's interested in buying a house in Utah. Now, if you're thinking about relocating to Salt Lake City, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We post videos on here weekly on different suburb tours, everything you would need to know before you actually relocate to Salt Lake City. In this video, I'm gonna break down the home buying process, the contract deadlines, and all of the common questions that I get about Utah, some of the biggest concerns that we see from our buyers relocating from out of state, and exactly what to do to prepare yourself to buy a house in Salt Lake City. So if you're detail oriented, maybe you're an engineer or a doctor, or you just have that mindset of wanting to know exactly what you're getting into, this is the video for you. The home buying process in Utah can really be broken into these 5 steps. I'm gonna give you a quick summary on how this works. Then I'm gonna talk through the contract timeline of exactly what to expect. And then we're gonna cover some Utah specific concerns that a lot of my out-of-state buyers ask me about. This is all the information that you're gonna wanna know going into the home buying process. So let's start with the first step, which is the pre-approval. It's not the most entertaining or the sexiest part of buying a house, but the reason why we recommend getting a pre-approval first is that it helps you identify what your purchasing power is, and better yet, it helps you identify which lender to work with and to really narrow down your home search. It doesn't make sense to start looking at homes unless you first know what type of home you qualify for. Getting pre-approved upfront also takes the burden off once you find the right house that you want to make an offer on, because now you're postured to actually submit the offer. If you find a house and it's a competitive environment and now we're waiting to get a pre-approval letter from a lender, you may miss out on the opportunity. If you have questions about the pre-approval process, or you want to get connected to a local lender who understands the Salt Lake City market, reach out to me. I'd be happy to connect you with some of the top lenders in the state. The second step is the actual home shopping process, or something that I like to call house speed dating. I use that analogy because it gives buyers a great understanding of looking at multiple houses in a row and really start to narrow down your focus on what you're looking for. It's one thing to see photos online of a property, but once you actually start looking at homes in person, it helps you identify the most important criteria and the most important aspects of the house that you're looking to purchase. And guess what? For a lot of buyers, when you start looking at homes in person, by the time you're done with that process, you might have completely changed the criteria you're looking for. Maybe you need that 4th bedroom, or maybe you need a slightly bigger backyard, or you're interested in a different location than you thought you were when you first started. The home buying process timeline can vary quite a bit. For some of our clients, it can happen within a matter of days or weeks. For other people, it takes months or years. If you see a particular home that you're interested in, but you're not quite in person in Utah yet, we always offer virtual tours for properties for some of our clients that are wanting to relocate to Utah. No matter what, you definitely want to look at a variety of different homes so that you can really dial in exactly what you and your family are looking for. The third step in this process is physically submitting an offer. The state of Utah has a Utah real estate purchase contract, which is used as the default contract for every house that you would buy in the state. New construction and builders can sometimes vary and use their own contract, but the majority of the time you would use Utah's purchase agreement. The 4th step in the home buying process is while you're under contract. So you've gotten the offer accepted. What happens in between that time frame of offer acceptance to actually closing on the property? That 4th step leads me to this timeline right here, which is where a lot of the moving parts occur. So this timeline kind of goes from left to right. You can think of your under contract timeline in really 3 phases. The first phase I like to call due diligence. So when that offer is accepted until the end of your due diligence deadline, that's when you're going to do things like a home inspection, or maybe look into the condition of the property. Maybe you're looking into the HOA rules and the CC&Rs to see what's allowed, or maybe even looking up the property taxes to ensure it's not inflated. That due diligence process gives the buyer an opportunity to make sure they're comfortable with the condition of the property and the overall situation. The second phase, when you're under contract, is the financing and appraisal deadline. That's typically the deadline where earnest money becomes non-refundable, so it's very important to keep track of that deadline. Now, that's when your lender is going to be doing a lot of things behind the scenes, assuming you're getting a mortgage. That's when the lender is going to push your loan through underwriting. They're going to order an appraisal. They're going to make sure that the appraisal comes back at or above the purchase price. Now, after that financing and appraisal deadline, you have this 3rd phase here where you're kind of sitting tight, waiting for the lender to issue the clear to close. Title is gathering all the necessary paperwork for the closing deadline. And that settlement deadline is kind of your no later than date to actually sign paperwork. Now, the difference between settlement and closing, and I give this analogy all the time, let's say you're signing paperwork on a Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. Well, that's when settlement is occurring, is when you're signing paperwork. Now, Utah is a title company state, which means you would go to a local title company to sign all the closing paperwork. And then the title company is responsible for ensuring that all the paperwork and all the mandatory disclosures and everything that's required in the state of Utah for you to become the official owner. Once it has been officially funded and recorded and it's in the county records, closing has occurred, and you can oftentimes get possession and get the keys to move into the house right away. Well, if that occurs too late on a Friday and the county's closed on the weekend and maybe Monday's a holiday, you might not be able to get keys and move in and officially close until that happens on the next business day. So that's a good example of the difference between settlement and closing. Now, I'm gonna run through some common questions that I often get asked from buyers who are interested in moving to Utah. Here's a short list of items that I often get asked about. One is radon. Radon is essentially a gas that comes from the earth. So sometimes radon levels in basements can be elevated, and that can be a health issue. Now, Utah has a lot of basements. Probably 95% of the homes in Utah have basements, which is unusual compared to a lot of other markets. And because basements are close to the earth, it can lead to elevated radon levels. Now, radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer in the state of Utah. So as part of your due diligence and maybe part of your home inspection process, it's always not a bad idea to have your radon levels tested. The World Health Organization and the EPA set certain limits on what's considered safe. But the issue becomes long-term exposure to elevated radon levels. So something to consider as part of your due diligence checklist. The second are sewers. People often get concerned about older sewer lines in cities like downtown Salt Lake City. Now, again, something that you can check during the due diligence and home inspection process is getting what's called a sewer scope, where they literally take a camera and they shove it down the sewer line, and they're looking for any bellies, or looking for tree roots that have maybe caused a blockage, and they get that camera evidence and they can see the condition of the sewer line. Well, what's interesting about Salt Lake City is you can oftentimes get a sewer insurance policy added to your homeowner's policy. It's usually relatively inexpensive. We're talking $10 or so a month. Otherwise, to replace a sewer line can be very expensive. We're talking anywhere from like 20, 30, I've even seen sometimes $40,000 to replace a sewer line. A big concern with people unfamiliar with maybe older cities is the sewer line. There's plenty of ways to mitigate that risk. Another concern that a lot of buyers have buying homes in Utah is roof condition. Now, we tend to have snowy winters and hot, dry summers that can really deteriorate roofs over time. Now, if we're talking a typical asphalt, shingled roof, what's interesting about Utah is you can actually legally add a second layer of shingles to the roof before you actually have to replace the roof. This can oftentimes extend the lifetime of your roof by another 15 years or so, and is significantly less money than replacing the entire roof. So something that we often see here in Utah is sellers adding a second layer of shingles before they entirely replace the roof. HOAs is kind of a hot topic. Some people are okay with homeowners associations, and then I've had other clients that absolutely hate HOAs, and they will not consider a home if it's in an HOA. I totally get it. There's pros and cons to HOAs. The extreme example of this is Daybreak. We've done a ton of videos about Daybreak. Their HOA tends to be much more involved, we'll say, in your everyday life than other HOA communities, where really they're just covering, common area maintenance. Maybe they include a utility or two, and that's about it. Now, what you'll notice in Utah is a lot of the new construction that's occurring in the southwest corner of the valley, places like Harriman, Riverton, South Jordan, Lehigh, Bluffdale, a lot of new construction happening. And when those builders are building entire communities, they usually have an HOA. Now, if you have a strong opinion about whether or not you live in an HOA community, again, make sure to reach out to us. We'll help guide and direct you to the suburbs or the neighborhoods, depending on what your preferences are. And last, I'm gonna talk about home warranties. Again, very common in the state of Utah. There's a huge misconception between a home warranty versus homeowner's insurance. Now, if you're getting a loan and a mortgage, your lender's gonna require homeowner's insurance. You also probably want one in case your house burns down. But a home warranty plan is completely optional. Now, here's what I tell my buyers. You don't have to get a home warranty plan. You can think of a warranty very similar to buying a flat screen TV that offers a warranty, right? And if it breaks, the manufacturer might replace it. The same is true with home warranty plans in Utah. They're oftentimes covering those really expensive items, something that can be very costly to replace. Now, these roughly cost between $500 to $800 here in Utah, depending on how much coverage you want on your home. And what's even better, in Utah's contract, you can actually directly negotiate for the seller to cover part or all of that home warranty in the contract. Now, if you have any specific questions about relocating to Salt Lake City, albeit one of these things we've covered today or something else, make sure to reach out to us. We would love to help you make that smooth move to Utah.